So with everyone who's just joined in, I was just giving a summary about last class, what we discussed, which is primarily what is yoga and what is the goal of yoga. To summarize that, it's to get that discriminatory knowledge to be able to notice and not get so identified with the world of suffering and take a step back and really notice ourselves for who we really are, truly are, and not get so caught up in identifying with all the external world and its suffering. So to dive right in, I was asking people about where does suffering stem from, and it stems from avidya, which is a klesha, the first klesha that Patanjali talks about. And avidya means lack of knowledge or ignorance or lack of understanding. Lack of understanding of what? Of asmita, of who we really are, which is the second klesha. And I then went on to ask you all to describe yourselves in probably a line or two as to, if I were to ask you right now, who are you? It could be anything. You don't have to, just whatever comes to your mind. It could be a word, a sentence. Just feel free to unmute yourselves and share that. Who are you? So I'm gonna start. I'm Parmita. I'm a raw vegan chef. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a pet mom. I love watching the waves and the sunset. That's who I am. Someone else?
Hi, I'm Sergi. I am an accountant. I love watching the sunset. I'd like to think I am a free-spirited person.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so what we get through this is, I'm going to rush because we have a constraint on time. But what we get through this is that we define ourselves, we constantly define ourselves of who we are through our likes and dislikes, through our rag and dvesh. Things we like or get attached to is rag. Things we don't like is dvesh. So that is again a form of klesha. These are reasons for suffering. If not right now, in the future, this is what will cause us pain. And where does this rag or dvesh lead to? So up till now I spoke about avidya, asmita, rag and dvesh. So these were the four kleshas that we talked about. And the last one is abhinivesh, fear of death or clingingness to life. It's because of this identity creation that we've generated through our likings, through our dislikes. We've had this attachment to life. We hold on so tightly and dearly to life. And this is intrinsic to our human experience. So I'm not saying that yoga is going to totally eliminate that. No, this is part of our human experience. In fact, even the Buddha talks about that life is full of suffering. Of course, there are causes to suffering, and there's a path to overcome suffering. But in essence, life is full of suffering. So I feel what's important for us from here to understand is that through these are the kleshas, and this is how it affects our chitta or our heart mind or how we feel. Like I mentioned at any point to you, when you ask how are you right now, whatever your answer is a culmination of your chitta. It's your heart mind. It's how are you feeling right now. There doesn't have to be an intellectual reason to that, how you are feeling. It may be an emotion, it may be a thought, it may be just a certain mood. It can be anything that you're feeling right now, and that is what your chitta is experiencing right now. And often we are constantly creating our sense of identity through this rag and dvesh, through this attachment and to things that we like and aversion to things that we don't like. So if those of you who are familiar with Vipassana practice, it's something that helps us stay in the middle. It's something that helps us to constantly reflect, to constantly take that step back and anchor ourselves in the moment, because we're often just, being pushed away by our likes and dislikes or by a memory of the past or anticipation of the future. We're constantly just dwelling in those states rather than being centered here. So that's a little bit about the kleshas, which was to add on to where we left last week. We will dive into the states of what are the types of vrittis, how can we overcome the vrittis in our next class. But in today's class, as some of you suggested, that we can discuss food and the yoga of food. I think this is a subject that's very close to my heart, so it's going to be difficult not to have my own personal bias in, but I'm going to still try and give you a reflection of what I learned in yoga diploma, and what were the books that we referred to, and what did they have to say about the yoga of eating, or the food discipline of yoga. So can all of y'all see the slide? I hope so. So we're gonna start. So there are two texts, actually three texts in Hatha Yoga. There is the Gheranda Samhita, there is the Hathapradipika, and there's the Shiva Samhita. We did actually study these briefly in our yoga school, and I'm just going to touch upon what they have to say. So I'm going to just quote sutras from or shlokas from these texts in today's discussion. So we start with, I don't have a copy of the Gheranda Samhita. This is the Hatha Pradipika, which is one of it is also translates into Light of Yoga. It's a classic 15th century Sanskrit manual on Hatha Yoga, written by Swatma Ram, who is also one of it. He also they have 4 chapters. So as we spoke in the last class about Patanjali having 8 limbs to yoga, in Swatvarams there are 4 limbs, and in Gheranda Samhita there are 7. So they talk about different, but I think we get into how we can interweave this in our discussion is that they all talk about the concept of mitahar, which is the way to eat, or the science of eating. But before I dive into that, we can just go through this slide, which tells us about how Gheranda Samhita is a talk between the sage Gheranda and his student Chanda. They have 7 chapters, which is the Satkarmas for cleansing of the body, the asanas for strengthening of the body, mudras for steadying of the body, pratyahar for calming the mind, pranayama for an inner lightness, dhyana for inner perception, and samadhi for self-liberation and bliss. So these are the 7 limbs of Gheranda Samhita. This one has 4, which is asana, and it has, one second, I'm going to open it up. Actually, this one has 5 because it's a Kaivalya Dham edition. So they've actually included their own study, their own yoga therapy, yoga as the 5th chapter. But otherwise, the 4 chapters would be about Shatkarmas, asana, pranayama. It also talks about chakras, kundalinis, bandhas, kriyas, and nadis, all of which are in these. We're not going to go into details of that, but these are the 2 texts that I'm constantly quoting. Actually 3, even the Shiva Samhita, which I'm quoting in today's discussion. So first thing, primarily to I think our discussion is what is food, and what does it mean when we say we're feeding our body. So according to yoga, food is that life-giving force. It is in our Upanishads, in the Taittiriya Upanishads. In fact, it's also mentioned that all of life, all of creation actually stems from food. And when whatever we eat, we become, of course. And we also, it is the individual grows out of food. And when I mean this, the grosser aspects go to affect our body, but the subtler aspect go to affect our mind and create our mind. And this is akin to saying that because we have so many sheets, we've all heard that we have a mental body, a physical body, an emotional body, a spiritual body, and it's not just the gross part of your food, or like the nutrients in your food will of course go on to develop the physical body, prepare it for the asana, but it's also the subtler aspects of that food that will go to affect your mind, which will help in your dharana, your dhyan, in your concentration, in your breath work. And like we mentioned in the previous class, that yoga is more experiential than theoretical. So how much ever I say all of this, try to put it into context with your life and see how much of it really resonates with you, how much of it have you probably already experienced, you know. So you might have noticed that certain foods before a yogic practice does not work for you. And again, when I mean yoga, I don't just mean an asana class. It can be any other limbs that you practice, either the meditation, the breath work, um, or if you don't do yoga at all, any form of mindfulness that you inculcate into your daily life, that is, food is going to have an impact on that. And since this topic is so close to my heart, since Prana Kitchen is a spin-off of my journey into food and yoga primarily, I think one thing I've really noticed is that yoga taught me how to notice the subtler aspect, or the subtleness of life. You know, there's some energy that governs all of us. There's sometimes there's a reason why I feel the way I feel, and there's no rational thought to it. There's no reason to feel that way, but I just do feel. And I feel it's me getting more and more in connection with those subtler aspects is when I could actually appreciate the subtler aspects of food, when I could actually understand that, okay, this diet is helping me feel a certain way. And that's when I say that veganism, which is the diet we promote at, or lifestyle, I don't like calling it a diet, at the kitchen, um, it's mainly because it just feels so great. It's not about the nutrition, it's not about the do's or the don'ts, it's not about even being 100% vegan. You know, you can do it as per moderation, as per how much ever you can. In fact, this reminds me of a very interesting conversation that my Vipassana teacher once told me, that anything you do should have right effort. And the Buddha describes right effort as something that can be sustained over a long period of time. Even Patanjali, for that matter, he talks about abhyas and vairagya, the two limbs to which you can overcome the vrittis. Abhyas being that which we can do with, we can have a welcoming attitude to it. We can do it uninterrupted and constantly. So I think that's important with any stream, you know, whether that's your eating, whether that's whatever you're doing, make sure you're putting in that right effort. If you put in too much, you try too hard, you're going to burn out at some point. If you do too little, you're not going to see the results as you probably expect. So you want to find that balance, you want to find that middle ground, you want to find that center in whatever we do. And that's when Mitahar comes into concept, the idea of how to eat, or the science of how to eat according to yoga. So before, as we spoke about the different bodies, so these are the 5 bodies, the pancha koshas, and they are the different sheets. And the first being the food sheet. So literally you are what you eat, because what you eat will go on to form your physical body, the grossest part of you. And that is the first kosha, the first layer, your first body. The second is pranamayi kosh, your vital energy. How energetic do you feel? And this is, you can think of this as that energy when you wake up in the morning. How do you feel? How much motivation do you have to get the day started, to get through to things? And obviously these will change, but what I'm trying to say is try to track if food has an interconnection to that, because I think over time my journey into food and well-being has definitely, I've seen a very strong relation with what I eat, how I eat, the time I eat, with this pranamayi kosh, with my vital energy, with my life force. So that's a connection you want to see. That's the subtleness you want to see. And again, this is something you cultivate, right? So it's through practice, it's through the abhyas, it's through constant practice of eating correctly, of doing your asana, of doing your pranayama, practicing the other limbs, yamas and niyamas, that do we reach to this level where we can really enjoy or notice the subtle nuances in our being, you know. And when I say our being, I mean even the other bodies or the other sheets. Then we move on to the Manomayi Kosh, which is the mental sheet. And this is what our mind comprises of. And this is the thoughts we have, the kind of thoughts we entertain. We all have so many thoughts throughout the day, but what is the quality of the thought? What is the nature of the thought? what are we primarily thinking about? Is it just about me, myself, my family? Is it a larger picture? So that what is your food for thought? The association you keep, the kind of friends you have, will also affect your mental sheath, your manomai kosh. And then we move on to the vigyanmai kosh, which is that discriminatory knowledge, which is when through our sadhana, through our practice, we can cultivate that knowledge which is intuitive to us, which resonates with us, which helps us discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. So though these the next in the next few slides I'm going to be discussing about apatya and patya foods, which are wholesome and unwholesome foods, I feel it's really important for you to put it in your context and see what resonates with you, because ultimately it should feel right or wrong from within, not just it's not just a diet or a fad or a set of principles or a doctrine of sorts. You have to live it, you have to take it outside of this and weave it or interweave it into your life. And then the last is the Anandamayi Kosh, which is your bliss body, which is that feeling of Ananda, Satchitananda, of truth, of wholeness, which you radiate with. So we'll start with what is a yogic definition. What is a yogic diet according to the scriptures? So I'm not going to read the Sanskrit sloks. I was intending to, but we don't have much time. But Swami Swatmaram of Hathapradipika says, eating sweet uncourteous food offered to the Almighty, leaving 1/4 of the stomach empty, this is known as mitahar. Gheranda Samhita says, they call the mitahar, which is pure, sweet, lubricated and fills only half the stomach, which is palatable and is eaten to please the god. So the common things that both these texts have are eat only half your stomach. So that's something that while you're eating, and I think how do we do this? How do we know that we're eating only half our stomach? Is be mindful, be in the now, because your body will give you a trigger and you will be able to know when you're full. Often while we're eating, we're multitasking, we're watching TV, we're having conversations, so we don't even know when our stomach receptors have signaled to our brain that we are full, but we continue to eat and shove food down our throat. So it's important to be mindful, stay in the moment, stay present. At least I understand that food is also a way to connect with our family, to have social interactions, but at least as a one-off, once in a day, at least one meal you can have in silence with yourself, and really be mindful of that, because again, like I said, it's that abhyas, it's that studying, it's that constant self-reflection that will enable you to understand, okay, this much quantity is enough for me. So because when I say half a stomach, some of you may be, how much is that? What is that quantity? There are some texts that say you should only eat as much as for how much of food fits into your palm. There are some texts that say that you should eat sitting on the floor, with our fingers, so that when we eat, we're able to salivate because of the smell. That salivation allows for proper digestion and we feel fuller faster. So I feel, again, try to adopt this as much as you can in your lifestyle and then notice how it works. So the mitahar is the concept. If you want to draw a circle and to represent, think of it as a pie chart to represent your food. Pie chart to represent your stomach. Half of your stomach would be food, okay, and the remaining half, 1/4 would be air, 1/4 is water. That is the concept of mitahar. Okay, so half your stomach filled with food, 1/4 with water, 1/4 with air. And why do they have this stress upon the importance of feeding to the Almighty? And I think this is interesting because those of y'all that come from traditional or religious families or background, y'all will have noticed your elders, or I've noticed my granddad, even till date, we first offer it to the Lord, he does puja, and then after that we distribute it among the family, we eat it as prasad. And I think this concept is, it's mainly there to nullify any food karma, that's residual food karma that's in your food, because we don't know, we today don't grow our own food, we don't know how it's coming, we don't know how it's sourced, we don't know the means to it, if it's completely fair trade or not. So to take away or dispose of any remaining food karma, we offer it to the Almighty. Also, that helps to inculcate the habit that we're not eating just for ourselves, but we're eating for a higher cause. We're eating because we want to continue our practice on the yoga, to understand the divine within. Those are also other definitions that the book suggests. But personally, I feel that just offering or eating as prasad is a very humbling act. It really helps to humble ourselves, which is something that's so deep rooted in Indian tradition. Even the act of sitting down on the floor, I think it makes me feel just so grounded. And I think when we enter a temple, the first thing we do is we bow down. And I think again that's a way to just like we spoke about in the previous class, that we want in the Sankhya Yoga evolution chart, we want to operate more from the buddhi or the cosmic intelligence rather than the ahankar, which is the I, ego-centered intelligence. And I think these small acts like offering to the Lord, surrendering to a higher force, bowing down, sitting down, all of this just helps to inculcate that. If for whatever reason it doesn't to you, find a tool or a mechanism to do that. Find a tool to help you feel more grounded, feel more humble before you eat food, because that's what the book is that's what they are suggesting, that you want to have this attitude while you eat. I'm gonna get into the sweet food and what types of food to eat in the next few slides. We'll just briefly go through this. So he who practices yoga without controlling his diet suffers from many diseases and does not make progress. Maharishi Gheranda says that 4 essential requirements for practicing pranayama are place, time, mitahar, and purification of the nadis. A person who is a devout practitioner of yoga, practices continence, yogic diet, mitahar, and renunciation, attains success in 1 year or little more. There is no scope of doubt in this statement. He whose food and enjoyment are balanced, whose movements and actions are balanced, whose sleeping and waking is balanced, his yoga becomes eliminator of sorrows. So all of these are actually just suggestions about how changing your diet or following a yogic diet is a prerequisite for the sadhaka, for a practitioner of yoga, and how right food choices can actually have a critical impact on how you feel, on your other koshas, the pancha koshas, which all leads to harmony or disharmony of being. In another word, which all leads to health or disease, right? So literally speaking, your health is just a bite away in that sense. If we look at food, being you are what you eat. I out here would also like to, in the previous slide, I also wanted, since we spoke a little bit about offering to the god to release any of the karma, in the residual karma in food, I actually consider this book manual for me, because it's something that I stumbled upon years ago thanks to my mom, the book actually suggests following solar cooked lifestyle or a solar cooked food lifestyle, and it's called the Sun Food Diet Success System by David Wolf. You can find this on Amazon. There'll be newer prints, but in that there's actually a food karma chart, and it actually goes to show how whole-based plant-based foods have a more positive karma, and then you have the onion and garlic and others that fall into the neutral karma or little lower karma, and then you have the negative karma for organ fat, blood, animal muscle, or eggs, insects, whatever else that that we eat. So this actually goes to show this, and I feel what this kind of highlights, the food karma, what I'm getting at, like we spoke about how the grossest aspect of food goes to affect our body and the subtler aspect goes to affect our mind. I feel it is this food karma that actually prepares the practitioner for yoga, because when we start understanding the subtlety of the food and the impression it has on our mind, we are able to make those food choices that help steady the mind, help calm the mind, are more sattvic in nature. And yeah, we will go on to that. So all these actually shlokas just re-emphasize the importance of mitahar, which is the concept that I just explained. And then Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita talks about the 3 types of diet. And I remember in last class, one of y'all were asking me, y'all were a little confused between these and the 3 gunas and the play of the 2. So this is again, like we spoke about the gunas being intrinsic to prakriti. It's in everything. Everything is a play of the gunas. And I think more than looking at this as just terms, I think try getting to the undercurrent of it, the impulse or the feeling of what do we mean by a sattvic food or a sattvic diet, what do we mean by a rajasic food, rajasic diet, and what do we mean by tamasic. And I also would like to remind you all to really look at the context in which you would apply this, so of course this is what the Sankhya philosophy says, but try to look at it as if you were to interweave this into your life. And I will give you all some examples to make this clearer. So these are the three different qualities or different food types. So the sattvic one is that which increases lifespan, mental essence, strength, health, comfort, and pleasantness. They are flavorful, unctuous, stable, satisfying to the heart, and are foods that are flavored by sattvic. Sattvic diet is also referred to a yogic diet. It is considered a natural state of unprocessed food that is fresh and free from any additives or preservatives. Sattvic diet should be consumed in its natural form as much as possible, that is raw, steamed, or very lightly cooked. Sattvic diet comprises of whole grains, carbohydrates, pulses, lentils, nuts, seeds, which are proteins, fresh fruits, vegetables, herbs, natural sweeteners in small amounts. The natural sweeteners in small amounts. Then we move on to a rajasic diet. What are the qualities of that? It is bitter, sour, salty, excessively hot, pungent, dry, burning, and are foods favored by rajasic, causing discomfort, depression, and illness. Rajasic items of food should be refrained in a yogic diet. They include caffeinated drinks such as tea and coffee, overly processed foods, artificial additives in food, hot chili, or anything that can irritate the mucous membranes, garlic, onion, mushrooms, etc. And then we move on to the tamasic diet, which is not fully cooked, flavorless, smelly, stale, left over by others, not fit as an offering. Is the food flavored by the tamasic. Tamasic diet contains foods which are heavy and cause fatigue or lethargy in a person. They are to be avoided by people suffering from chronic ailments or depression. They include foods like red meat, alcohol, stale or rotten foods, overripe or unripe fruits, burnt food, overly processed foods, fermented foods, deep fried food. So this is what the text says. However, I feel for me as a practitioner of yoga and also someone who follows a vegan lifestyle, I have modified this as per my lifestyle and how much can I do it. And I think this is again that essence of right effort. How much are you able to do to your best ability? How much resonates with you? So there have been instances where I will eat, for instance, say stale leftover food. I'm someone who does not like food wastage at all, but at the same time I don't like to overeat, so I will probably have leftovers from my last meal because I don't want to throw it in the dustbin. There'll be times where if something gets burnt, I again feel really bad about wasting food, so I probably will still consume it. Regardless of that, there are also times where I will have onion and garlic for flavor in my food, though I predominantly don't like that. But that's again, it's a personal preference. I don't think it necessarily stems from the idea that, oh, I'm a yoga practitioner, I shouldn't. And I don't think that any of these should be like a rule book as I should or I shouldn't. It is just what feels right to you, because only then will it be sustainable. If it comes from the mind as I should or I shouldn't, you're going to do it for a week, 2 weeks, 1 month, but it's not going to be sustainable for a longer period of time. So try to incorporate this in however you can into your life, to whatever degree. Also, don't pressurize yourself to be 100%, so if it says no onion, garlic, mushrooms, you don't have to from tomorrow ban yourself of all of those foods. You can probably look at the effect of that. Go a week without onion, garlic, see how does that make you feel. And I'm not just saying physically, emotionally, mentally. Like we spoke, all of these have a subtle effect on us. So experiment with it, experiment with yourself, and whatever the results of those experiments are is your truth, is your finding, is what's most pertaining to you. So then we move on to basics of yogic diet, and out there we talk about pathya and apathya foods, so which are wholesome and unwholesome foods. So the foods that are apathya, which are prohibited for a yogi, are those which are bitter, sour, pungent, salty, heating, green vegetables other than those which are, there are some green vegetables which are allowed: sour gruel, sesame, mustard, alcohol, fish, flesh foods, buttermilk, curds, horse gram, oil cakes, garlic, etc. So unhealthy diet should not be taken that which is reheated after becoming cold, which is dry, devoid of natural oil, which is excessively salty or acidic, stale, or has too many mixed vegetables. On the contrary, we should be having pathya or wholesome foods, which are the most conducive for the yogi, which are good grains, whole wheat, rice, barley, milk, ghee, brown sugar, sugar candy, honey, dry ginger, patola fruit, type of cucumber, different vegetables. Again, there are specific vegetables which are allowed: moong, pulses, pure water. The yogi should take nourishing and sweet foods mixed with ghee and milk. It should nourish the dhatus, which is the tissues in Ayurveda, and be pleasing and suitable. Let me see in my notes if I can tell you which are the exact 5 of both of them. The vegetable. Okay, no, I don't seem to have it here, but so essentially we get an idea, a broad idea of what is allowed, what is not allowed for a yogic diet. The reason why they say no of the rajasic or tamasic or heat generating or lethargy generating foods is because it does not assist the practitioner on the path of yoga. Path of yoga being to ultimately get that indiscriminately knowledge, and this is just a vehicle, this is just one of the vessels. In fact, earlier on in the slide of the Gheranda Samhita, I'm just going to go back there because it's quite interesting. The Gheranda Samhita calls itself a book on Ghatastha Yoga, which literally translates to vessel of yoga, wherein the body and the mind are depicted as vessels that carry and serve the soul, or Atman or Purusha. So it is this cleansing process, it is this cleansing process of the mind and the body that allows the practitioner to really stay established in the practice of yoga. We also spoke about the different states of mind, and to really get to that ekagra chitta, to get to that state of one pointed awareness, we have to allow for our mental afflictions to slow down. And food has a direct relation on our mind, it has a relation on our breath too. So when we don't have such heat generating foods, our mind is more naturally stable, and we are able to achieve concentration a lot easier with a lot less effort, and can continue with our practice. So again, I would say try it, see it for how it works, because in Kriya Yoga, one of the Kriya Yoga limbs are tapas, which literally translates to heating up or fire, and it is this fire that we're generating. Why are we doing this tapas? Why is there this austerity? Controlling food or restricting certain foods is a form of austerity. It is a form of controlling our senses. And why are we doing this? The reason why we're doing this is because we're trying to see that when we make these changes in our lifestyle, in our diet, through our asana practice, through doing breath work, through doing meditation, any of the other earlier 4 limbs of yoga, while doing these practices, what is happening to our mind? How easy it is to stay centered, or how difficult is it to stay centered in the now? And for those of y'all that have done experiments with their body, probably done some fasts, you will notice that the first 2-3 days are extremely challenging. And what is challenging is your mind. It is the mind that tells you to give up. It is the mind that tells you that this is too difficult, and we're constantly being pulled by the impulses of the mind, which is why Hatha Yoga, which is what these are the 3 primary texts of Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is also known as Raj Yoga. Why is it called Raj Yoga? Because Raj meaning king, and the mind is the king of all senses. It's the strongest indriya, the strongest sense organ. And if we get control over that, we literally have control over our life. We have control over everything else. So this is the process to doing that. There's also another book that I really highly recommend. It's not a yogic book, but in my definition, it would definitely classify as a yogic book. It's called The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. And just to add on to what we were talking about, it really goes to show how not only is our mind our strongest sense organ, it is also what determines our reality. He talks about how 99% of all diseases are due to our perception of it. It's our perception of reality. And only 1% of diseases, even the most chronic ones, are due to genes. So showing us the power we have in not just our choices, but the way how we choose to live, how we choose to eat, we choose to feel, we choose to interact with everyone else. We have a choice. So make sure to exercise that choice. How much? As regularly as possible, on a daily basis if possible, and into whatever degree you can. So if maybe, and see what works or what doesn't work. Of course, for someone like me, I would not, even though the book does suggest that have milk, ghee, in just today's context and time, I feel the way we don't have the same lifestyle as our ancestors. So we primarily can't just have the same food, right? And also the way the food is sourced, so that's such an important factor. Over time, I think yoga has helped me prioritize myself, cultivate more self-love, and that has led to a sense of unconditional love of towards all sentient beings. To kind of this path of eating vegan food is just a reflection of that softening of the heart, of that feeling for all sentient beings. In fact, the first yama itself is ahimsa, which is non-violence. So definitely, eating, you can modify this as per what works. They at that time and point being when these texts were written centuries ago, is when it was a whole different way. Like, animals weren't looked as commodities. They were not factories for just producing milk. They were taken care of. They were considered a part of the family. They were fed. They were given love to, and they received the love back from the animal in the form of either the milk, the butter, the ghee, which is not the condition now. So I'm not going to change this into a vegan talk or a way to promote veganism, but what I'm trying to get at is that try to apply this into your lifestyle and see what resonates and what doesn't resonate with you. We'll move on into so few things that the yogic scriptures, I know I have to wrap it up, Kadu, I know you need to rush, believe. So few things the yogic scriptures strongly discourage are overeating. They definitely say moderation is key, and I think that's moderation for everything, not just diet. But yeah, ati sarvatra varjit. Excess of anything is bad. We should take everything in moderation, and also higher yogic practices like meditation, pranayama are done for long hours of sitting, which if you have a light meal, it does assist that. And this is again something, if those of you all have been practitioners of any form of meditation, especially vipassana, and if you've gone to the SN Goenka School of Vipassana, if the second time you go or revisit for a retreat, they actually cut down one of your meals. They tell you try not to, because you'll notice, you'll be able to feel your breath more, you'll be able to be more aware, and you'll actually notice that correlation between your mind, body, and being. You'll start noticing that interrelation. And I feel that's when we start this disintegration of just the Annamaya Kosh. So of course we need food to first have an association with this physical body, but then we want to go beyond that. We want to go beyond this physical body and try to dig deeper into the other koshas, into the other bodies, subtler bodies that we all have, and understand the nature of that. So we've so far discussed what food should we have, the apatya foods, sattvic foods primarily, eating sweet uncourteous food that is first given to the Almighty, leaving 1/4 of the stomach empty and 1/4 with water. So this is what mitahara is. And also another thing to notice is that while I'm sure most of you all would already know, but after eating a heavy meal, ideally no asana practice, no breathwork practice, no pranayama practice. It's difficult to actually even meditate. So even in Vipassana or other meditation schools and camps, they after lunch they actually give that 1 hour period where you just take rest, because you allow for 70% of your energy goes into digesting the food. So it's really not available, and something like meditation is very high energy. You require a lot of energy to be able to sit for dhyan. So you can't just do it after eating a heavy meal. The only 2 asanas that you can do is Vajrasana, if you all know of that, and you can also lay to your left side to keep your Surya Nadi open, which is your right nostril. So Hatha literally translates to sun and moon, sun being the right nostril, moon being the left nostril. So sometimes if you're feeling excessively hot, that means the sun energy is too much in the body. You can just shut the right nostril and take a few breaths through your left nostril. That's Chandra Bedan Pranayam. And then if you also, when you're feeling a little too cold, you can also take a few breaths through the right. This also helps with digestion because it increases the gastric fire. So these are just few things that we learn in yoga school, but I think more importantly, we try to get in touch with these subtler elements that actually comprise of our body comprises of. So that's where we look at food. They also say that when the air enters the sun energy channel, it is a proper time for a yogi to take his food. And I often notice this, that at night when I don't get sleep, and if I just do a check on my nostrils, most often the right nostril is more prominent, and this just shows that I'm more awake, I'm more alert, I'm more aware. There's a lot of heat generating in the body, which is why it's difficult to just go to sleep. So the next time you're probably awake, you can just do at night, you can just do a self check and see which of your nostrils are more prominent. And if the left one is more prominent, which is the moon nadi or chandra nadi, it then that's a good time to go to sleep, because the moon has a cooling effect on the body, it's nurturing force, and that's the meaning of hatha. It's the balancing of the sun and moon energy, the active and the passive, the yin and the yang within us, the masculine and the feminine within us, to restore that sense of balance and really feel radiantly alive, to feel very healthy, to feel to just and radiate that. So that's okay. Last slide. So to what in conclusion, what does the Chandra Yoga Upanishad say? It is yogic diet is not limited to a positive impact to physical health, but it also is the harmony to a person's state of mind, which is what we just spoke about. The balancing fact between the active and the passive, the sun and the moon energy. If food is pure, then pure will be the essence of the body. Purity of physical body leads to stability of memory, and if the memory becomes stable, a person will not suffer mental affliction. This is again the linking back to the kleshas, what we started in the beginning. Avidya, Asmita, Rag, Dvesh, Abhinivesh, the memory of who we really are, to stay centered in that. We're larger than what we think we are. We're just constantly pulled by the mind's likes and dislikes, the aversion and attraction, and we're constantly creating this identity of ours and clinging on to life so dearly, which of course is, we are here to celebrate life, but all we're trying to say is that reduce that grip on life, just surrender, allow that hold to be a little lighter, and this happens. This is something that you cultivate, and food can definitely have an impact on that, because it can have a direct impact on your mind and your breath, both of which are known as the strongest sense organs of how you determine life, of how you perceive your reality, of how you wire your biology. Your entire belief system can be rewired. Your entire belief system can rewire your genetics. It's that powerful. It's literally that powerful. It can override your biology, and that is the power of our mind. So definitely, in fact, even in yoga, especially since Kadu, you're here and you're also a student of Miss Sanjana, she often talks about neuroplasticity and yoga, and how yoga has the ability to really change the neural pathways, of how we react to stress, how we react to what is stress. Stress is just another word for suffering. What is it that causes us stress, pain, and it's how we are able to cope with it, how are we able to deal with it, what are the tools we have, and yoga being definitely that foundation that allows us to deal with it on a much more healthier level, if I may say so. So I'm not getting into this, but yeah, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. The Taittiriya Upanishad considers food to be as medicine, so Aushidhya Annam. The Taittiriya tells us that there was thus the creation down to earth, and from earth arose vegetation of various kinds, herbs or aushadhis, which became the diet of the individual, the Purusha. So if we do continue to have a yogic diet, we eat less, we have a in moderation, don't overeat, try to be mindful, try to offer to the Lord, eat sweet foods, not too strong, salty, bitter, astringent foods. It helps to cultivate that state of sattvic mind, of sattvic being, which ultimately is the nature, the quality, as we spoke about in Sankhya Yoga, of buddhi. Buddhi originates from sattva, and it is the ahankar originates from rajas. So neither of them, I'm saying, neither of them are bad, good. All of them are important in certain proportions in our life. But definitely, by being more sattvic, you're able to give that reign over of your mind to the cosmic intelligence, than your ego creating intelligence. Then your ego creating mind of likes and dislikes. You're able to hand over the reins to the larger power, the larger force. So yes. And on the next, we will definitely get into the yamas and niyamas in detail, along with the kleshas and the vittis. But yogic diet is mainly a vegetarian diet. But it's also bases in the thought of ahimsa, like we spoke about the first yama, the self-restraint. And it also it also says that how food is related to, or eating vegetarian food is related to, the niyama of socha, which is cleanliness, and santosha, contentment. So basically the food helps to make you feel content, makes you feel have feel lighter. And I feel overall eating food is, for me, eating vegan food, not just vegetarian, but is a spiritual practice in itself. So when we say that we're having this restraint to kind of do yoga, I feel more than, I think, eating a certain kind of food or following a certain kind of lifestyle by itself is a yogic practice, and by itself is your tapas, or is your abhyas, is your self study. It is something that you cultivate, it is something that you practice daily. And when you do that, there is a certain softening of the heart that arises, which allows for unconditional love, or that anandamayi kosha, or that bliss body to really be activated. So yeah, that's all for now. Sorry, I've run a little over time, but really sorry for today's technical glitch. In case y'all have any questions, I'm happy to have a short sharing circle. We can discuss what y'all found insightful, something that y'all are confused about.